The evening sun spread out over the little house, making the walls glow with warm orange and gold colors. Lara stood in front of her mirror. Slowly taking off her blouse after a tiring day, she let out a big sigh, and her reflection showed how worn out she felt, plus the quiet loneliness that had stuck with her for way too long. She was always so graceful, with a soft kind of beauty from all the quiet things she'd given up over the years, but tonight that alone feeling hit her harder than ever. She figured she was by herself in the house, lost in her thoughts as she grabbed a new dress. Then the door made a creaky sound and opened up. Her heart skipped a beat as she spun around, holding the dress tight to her chest there in the doorway. Was her son Daniel? His eyes got really big from surprise. And for a second they both just stood there frozen. They were stuck in a quiet that neither knew how to fix. Laura's breath got stuck. "Daniel, what are you doing?" Her voice shook a bit even, though she tried to stay calm. "I'm sorry, Mom." He stumbled over his words, his voice deep but all shaky. "I didn't know you were here. I thought you were downstairs." He started to step back, but something in his face made Lara stop. It wasn't just being embarrassed, there was something else in his eyes. Something not said, something heavy and mixed up. Laura's chest felt tight. She wanted to brush it off, act like it never happened. But that look stuck in her head even after Daniel rushed out of the room. For the rest of the evening, the house felt weird. Every noise, every quick look between them had this strange new tightness. At dinner, Daniel was super quiet. Not like usual, he wouldn't look at her. But when he did, it was fast, almost like he felt bad, almost like he wanted something. Laura tried hard to keep things light, chatting about work, about what to buy at the store, about small stuff that usually filled the quiet. But under her calm smile, her heart was going fast. Later that night, as she sat on the couch, Laura kept thinking about that mirror moment. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, just a mix-up, just an accident, but deep down, she knew it wasn't that easy. There was a change, something she couldn't ignore. When Daniel came into the living room with a glass of water, their eyes met again. This time, neither looked away fast enough. Lara felt her cheeks get warm, and Daniel's hand shook a little as he put the glass on the table. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked softly. Almost too softly. She nodded, but her throat felt dry. "I'm fine," she whispered. The quiet stretched out between them, filling the room with something not said. Lara could hear the faint ticking of the clock, could feel her own heartbeat echoing in her chest. She wanted to talk, to say they should forget it, but her lips wouldn't move. Instead, Daniel's gaze stayed gentle, searching and way too close to something not allowed. Lara felt her world tip, like she was on the edge of something she didn't dare to name, and in that shaky moment she realized everything had already changed. Laura quickly looked away, her hands folding tight in her lap. She couldn't handle the weight of his eyes on her anymore. It was too much, too sudden, too risky. "You should get some rest," she said, her voice wobbly but strong. Daniel paused, like he wanted to say more, but then he just nodded. "Good night, Mum." His tone was low, full of stuff not said, as he went to his room. Lara leaned back on the couch and closed her eyes. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm the storm inside. She was a mother, she reminded herself, and he was her son. Whatever she thought she saw in his eyes, it had to be her imagination. It had to be. But her heart didn't listen, beating faster every time she thought about the look he gave her when he opened the bedroom door. It wasn't a kid's look anymore. Daniel wasn't the little boy she used to hold. He was a man now, tall, strong, and with a grown-up side that surprised her. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Lara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the house settling down. She thought about the years she'd raised him alone ever since his dad left. She thought about how he'd always protected her, always been there when life got too hard. Maybe that closeness had made something she never wanted to see. The next morning she kept busy in the kitchen, acting like everything was normal. She made breakfast, humming to fill the quiet, but her hands shook. When she put a plate in front of him, Daniel said thanks quietly, but his eyes stayed on her in a way that made her pulse go quick. Daniel, she said at last, making herself look at him about last night. Let's just forget it, all right? He froze then. Put down his fork, his jaw got tight. And for a moment he looked like he might argue, but then he just nodded. Slowly though, his eyes said something else. If that's what you want. Her breath got stuck. Why did it hurt to hear him say it like that? Why? Did it feel like she was losing something, even when she knew this was best? The day went on. That the air between them never got clear. Every little moment, like when his hand brushed hers, reaching for a cup, or when he stood too close in the hallway, felt full of something risky. That evening, Laura decided she needed space. She told Daniel she was going for a walk, needing fresh air. The truth was she needed distance from him, even if just for an hour. The night was cool and the streets were quiet. She walked slowly, her thoughts heavy, her heart torn between saying no and the strange pull she couldn't get away from. She knew it was wrong to even feel this mixed up. But feelings don't follow rules, they come up without asking, breaking down her careful walls. When she got back home, the house was dim with just the soft light from the living room lamp. She set down her bag thinking. Daniel was in his room, but he was there waiting on the couch as soon as she stepped in. He stood up, his face was serious, his eyes full of something that made her knees feel weak. Mom, he said quietly, we can't just pretend nothing happened, because something did. Laura froze at the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. Mom, he said quietly, we can't just pretend nothing happened, because something did. Laura's hands tightened on the strap of her bag. She felt her whole body go still, as though the air itself had turned heavier. Daniel, she whispered, her voice trembling, don't say that you don't understand what you're talking about. But Daniel stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I do understand, he insisted, his tone steady, though his breathing was uneven. I know what I felt last night, and I think you felt it too. Laura's chest ached as though his words were pulling at something deep inside her. She shook her head, though her voice cracked when she tried to reply. You're confused, you're young, and I'm your mother. We can't. Her words faltered, her throat tightening. For a long moment the silence between them felt unbearable. Daniel's expression softened, and he took a step back as if afraid of pushing her too far. I don't want to hurt you, he murmured, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I felt this for a long time. Laura turned away, covering her mouth with one hand. She couldn't let him see her tears. She told herself he was just lost, just carried away by emotions he didn't fully understand, but her heart betrayed her again, echoing his every word as though they were her own hidden truths. Daniel, you can't, she said finally, her voice low, fragile. We can't go down this road. People wouldn't understand. I wouldn't forgive myself. He was quiet for a long while. Then gently he said, I don't care what people think. I only care about you. The words pierced her like a blade. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him to stop, to end this before it destroyed them both, but instead she stood frozen, her breath uneven, her heart pounding like a drum. That night she avoided him. She locked herself in her room, sat on her bed and stared at the shadows on the wall. She told herself over and over that she was stronger than this, that she had to draw a line, that she could not let this feeling grow. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was his face, the raw honesty in his eyes. When he said he only cared about her, morning came, but the heaviness did not lift. At breakfast they barely spoke. Daniel's silence was not the usual kind. It was the kind that carried a storm beneath it. Laura pretended to read the newspaper, though the words blurred before her eyes. By afternoon she could no longer take it. She found him sitting outside on the porch, staring at the distance with a look too old for his years. For a moment she just watched him, her heart twisting with emotions she didn't want to name. Daniel, she finally said, her voice breaking the silence. He turned, and the pain in his eyes nearly shattered her. If you want me to stop, he said slowly, then tell me you don't feel the same. Just say the words, and I'll never bring it up again. Laura's lips parted, but no sound came out. She tried to form the words that would end this, that would push him away for both their sakes, but her throat closed, and her silence betrayed her. Daniel rose from the porch, stepping closer, his gaze searching hers with desperate hope. "You can't say it, can you?" he whispered. Laura's breath trembled, her hands trembled, the truth she had buried for so long was now staring her in the face, and before she could stop herself, her eyes glistened with tears. Daniel's breath caught at the sight of her. He had seen his mother cry before, but never like this. These were not the tears of sadness alone. They carried something else, something that shook him to his core. "Mom," he whispered, reaching out as though to comfort her. Lavra stepped back, quickly wiping her face with trembling hands. "No, Daniel, don't," she said, her voice sharp but weak at the same time. "This isn't right. We can't let this feeling destroy us, but it's not destroying me." Daniel answered firmly, his voice stronger than hers. "It's the only thing that feels real. I know you feel it too. Why are you so afraid of it?" Laura's chest heaved. Her heart racing, she turned her back to him, staring at the quiet garden beyond the porch. "Because I'm your mother," she whispered, almost choking on the words. "And because the world would never forgive. They would call it wrong, shameful. I couldn't live with that." Daniel's footsteps drew closer. "But we don't live for the world. We've always only had each other, haven't we?" His voice softened, now breaking down the anger and showing the boy she once knew. "You raised me alone, you gave me everything. And maybe that's why I see you differently, not just as my mother, but as someone I stop." Lara cried out, suddenly turning to face him with eyes full of anguish. "Don't say it, please." "Daniel, don't make this harder." He stopped mid-sentence, his chest rising and falling heavily, his hands clenched at his sides, his lips pressed tightly together, as though holding back everything he wanted to confess. Laura's heart broke at the sight of him. He was so young, yet his eyes carried so much love and pain that it nearly undid her. She wanted to reach out to hold him, to comfort him like she had when he was a child. But now every small touch felt dangerous, as if a single moment of weakness would undo all her walls. The days that followed were filled with silence and distance. Laura threw herself into chores, into cooking, into anything that kept her hands busy and her mind away from him. Daniel, on the other hand, avoided her gaze, but she could feel the weight of his presence wherever he was in the house. At night, she lay awake, haunted by his words. "We don't live for the world." That sentence echoed in her mind, clashing with her fears. Her morals, her longing, it felt like a war inside her heart. And no matter how much she tried, she could not silence the truth. She did feel something one evening, after days of distance. Lavra found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, lost in thought. He looked up when she entered, and for the first time in days their eyes met without turning away. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice almost breaking, "I need you to promise me something." His jaw tightened. "What is it?" "That you'll find someone," she whispered, "someone your age. Someone who can give you the future you deserve. Promise me you'll let go of this, whatever this is." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, his eyes dark, unreadable. Finally, he shook his head. "I can't promise that, because letting go of this means letting go of you." Her breath trembled as silence filled the room. The walls felt like they were closing in on her, pressing her toward the truth she had tried so hard to escape. And then Daniel stepped closer, his voice lower, almost breaking. "You can keep pretending if you want, you can run, you can hide, but the truth is still there. You feel it too, don't you, Mom?" Lavra froze, her lips parting as her heart pounded against her ribs. She could no longer find the strength to deny it. Laura's lips trembled, but no words came out. The truth had been written in her silence, in her eyes, in the way her chest rose and fell with every breath. Daniel saw it. He felt it, and the heaviness in the air grew too deep to escape. "Daniel," she whispered finally, her voice breaking like fragile glass, "what are we doing to ourselves?" His expression softened, the storm in his eyes dimming into something tender, aching. "We're just being honest," he said quietly, "for once in our lives. We're not hiding." Tears burned at the corners of Laura's eyes. She turned her head away, but Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice as though afraid the very walls would overhear. "You don't have to say it, I already know. I see it every time you look at me. You feel the same." Laura pressed her hand to her chest as though to quiet the violent pounding of her heart. For years, She had been strong, building walls around herself, pretending she was only his mother, that her role was simple, unshakable. But Daniel had grown, and life had changed, and in her loneliness she had let her heart slip into forbiddance territory. Her silence was the answer he needed. Daniel's shoulders lowered, relief and pain washing over him. At once he reached for her, hands slowly, carefully, as though she were made of something fragile, and for the first time Laura did not pull away. Their hands touched, warm, trembling, and the world outside ceased to exist. The house was quiet, the night air heavy, and for a moment it was just them standing at the edge of something they could not name. "I don't know how to stop this," Lavra admitted in a whisper, her tears finally falling. "I know I should, but I can't." Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with a mixture of hope and sorrow. "Then don't we'll figure it out. Mum, we'll find a way." Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love could conquer judgment, fear, and the cruel eyes of the world, but reality pressed against her ribs, reminding her of every consequence that would follow that night. Laura could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind torn between longing and fear. Every sound of the house reminded her of him, every creak, every shift of the floorboards, and when she closed her eyes, she saw the way he had looked at her, not as a child, but as a man who had chosen her above all else by mourning her decision. Was clear, or so she thought. She would end this. She would build her walls again, even if it shattered both their hearts. But when she walked into the kitchen, ready to speak the words, she froze. Daniel was already there, his bag on the table, his eyes restless. He looked up at her, and she saw it instantly. He had made a decision of his own. "I can't stay here like this anymore," he said softly, his voice breaking. "If you won't admit what we are to each other, if you'd rather keep pretending, then maybe I need to go." Laura's chest tightened. "Go?" "Daniel, where would you go?" He swallowed hard, his gaze locked with hers. "Anywhere. I just know I can't keep living in the same house, loving you in silence while you keep pushing me away." Her world spun, her legs weak beneath her. She had wanted distance, but now the thought of losing him, truly losing him, was unbearable. Her lips parted, her voice trembling as the truth pressed at the edge of her mouth. "You won't lose yourself," he whispered. "You'll only lose me if you push me away. And I don't want to go, not unless you really want me to." Laura's heart pounded against her ribs. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes she had known all her life, yet now filled with a love so deep it terrified her. For years she had carried the burden of loneliness, raising him alone, pretending she was strong. But now she stood at the edge of something she had never expected, the chance to be seen, to be wanted, to be loved without measure. "I don't want you to go," she finally said, her voice fragile but certain. "Stay, please." Daniel's stay relief washed over his face, and he pulled her into his arms. Lara closed her eyes, resting her head against his chest, listening to the rapid beat of his heart. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The world outside still existed with all its rules and judgments, but inside their small home, a different truth lived. It was fragile, dangerous, and uncertain, but it was theirs. Lavra knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be questions, there would be shame. There would be nights she would wonder if she had made the right choice. But as Daniel held her, she realized something she had been too afraid to admit until now. Love in all its impossible forms was worth the risk. And so, against all the fears that haunted her, she chose him. The house was quiet, but their hearts were not. A new story had begun, one that would test them, bind them, and change them forever.